Hey, good morning, real estate world. John Moss for General Property Management right here in good old Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So I meant this to be a video that I did in August, and it's about an article put out by the National Association of Realtors. It was an article written by Melissa Tracy, who writes for Realtor Magazine, and it talks about the Biden's rent cap plan and how that's harmful to housing. The article is titled "Biden's Rent Cap Plan is Harmful," housing groups say. She writes it from the perspective of builders, people building big apartment buildings, and I'm going to give you my what I think is going on and a little different perspective. From my perspective is from the property owner, the more small property owner, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and the tenants we have here, and my opinion differs a little than hers, but I think she's right on for the most part. Well, from the perspective of where she's coming from, she is absolutely dead on, but mine's a little different. Anyways, this was from July. I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get this out. It's September 9th, Monday. I believe the debate is tonight between Vice President Harris and President Trump. I hope I'm not wrong on that. Pretty sure that's tonight. Um, so in this article, she goes on to say that Biden's proposed rent cap, and this was middle of July, they came out with this, is 5% per year on large landlords. And he defines a large landlord as someone who has 50 or more units. And in here, the author says of this article, infringement upon private property rights is what they see as a problem with this. Owners should have the right to set rates based on what the market is doing in the economy. Um, so I'm going to quote Biden here. He says, I'm sending a clear message to corporate landlords. If you raise rents more than 5% on existing units, you should lose valuable tax breaks. Biden goes on to say, rent is too high and buying a home is out of reach for too many working families and young Americans after decades of failure to build enough homes. I'm determined to turn that around. That's end quote from our president. So he also talks about repurposing federally owned land for building more affordable homes. So as I see that, they're going to take land that's probably vacant and then build apartment buildings on it. And he, quoting again from the president, to lower housing costs for good, we need to build, 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 and then it goes on. And that's where the quote is ended. So anyways, I think there'd be unintended consequences from this. I think that capping rents at 5% probably hurts tenants. I can tell you that during COVID, we had many landlords that came to me and said, you will not raise rents during COVID. It would be immoral. It'd be the wrong thing to do. We all just have to ride this out. We all have to work together. You will not raise rents at all. And so we didn't. We didn't raise rents for 2 years. Coming out of COVID, then, of course, rents quickly jumped back up. Um, so then another unintended consequences could be, from my perspective, we're Eau Claire. We have a lot of small landlords. A lot of them are good blue collar, hardworking folks. A lot of them are skilled in construction, and they do look at what's going on, and they see a house that's run down, and they do purchase it and they fix it up themselves. With their own hard work, their own sweat equity, and they borrow that money from a bank. If they're only allowed to get 5% for a rent increase, if they buy an old beater house that's renting for $500 per month, and then they want to invest tens, twenties, $30,000, maybe even $50,000, and I've seen some of them spend over $100,000 on rehabilitating a house to get more rent out of it. They replace windows, doors, siding, roof, soffit, fascia, all new flooring, cabinets, appliances. Oftentimes they have to rewire the entire house because of knob and tube wiring, rotten old plumbing. And then if they're only supposed to get then from $500 of rent, now they're supposed to only be able to get 525. The math just does not work out for them. And then these sort of houses that are already existing, 100 years old, don't get rehabilitated. They just stay kind of run down and dilapidated. So that's a bad thing. And then I think what's going on too is some are just before COVID, the national debt was like $8 trillion. By using the government's own numbers today, our national debt is $35.5 trillion. So you have roughly the same amount of apartments and you have a lot more money chasing that same amount of goods. The same thing we see with like groceries, gasoline, two by fours, housewares, pots and pans, appliances. Everything's way more expensive. And, putting a rent cap on landlords is not probably a good thing, a national rent cap. So I think it's just probably politics trying to shift the blame to somebody else when it's really nobody's fault. It's just what it is. So instead, again, from the perspective of builders, the author of this article says that instead we should focus on low income housing tax credits to builders who are building apartment buildings. I think that's maybe a wrong approach as well. I think there shouldn't be any incentives and we should let free markets just prevail. What I see that does is it gives an edge to people who have big corporations, multi-million dollars to invest into big projects. It gives them an incentive at the expense of the small landlord, the mom and pops, the people that that probably at least in Eau Claire have a lot of housing. So it's unfair to them. So I think we should just let free markets prevail. So probably do away with low income housing tax credits, not make more of them. I think that's probably a bad thing. A lot of these government programs come with a lot of costs, so you can't have a little tiny project. You have to have a huge multi-million-dollar project to cover some of the costs that the government requires for you to get on their program, such as environmental studies, the complicated accounting. A lot of these costs have to get covered, and if it's a huge project, you can spread those costs around, but the small little bitty landlord can't. And then they say in here that for us to keep up with demand, we have to add 328,000 new apartments every year to keep up with current demand, and that's nationally. So I don't know. I think there's a better way. I think it's a good article. I think we're probably better off just to leave everything alone and don't do any sort of government intervention. I think the unintended consequences will be it'll just make things worse. And some of it we already know will make things worse, so we should just leave it alone. Well, that's my 2 cents. It's a good article. Good article. You should look at it. I'll put a link in there for it. And yeah, that's it. John Moss for General Property Management, right here in good old Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Thank you very much for watching.